Buonasera.
Good evening.
Mi stavo ricordando
I was remembering
che quando sono arrivato in Italia,
that when I arrived in Italy, many years have passed already,
intorno al 2000, fine 2005,
around the end of
primi anni,
2005, 2006, those years.
agli inizi stavo
At the
cominciando a
beginning,
organizzare le cose al meglio,
I was starting to organize things the
fare,
best, making a program, the things I have to do,
organizzarmi
when to
meglio
do them,
e vedevo che più
how
cercavo
to
di
organize
cambiare
things, and I realized that the
qualcosa
more I tried to organize things, the more I had to change them.
finché a un certo punto ho detto, guarda,
Until at a certain point I
cerco
said,
di programmarmi un po'
look,
meno
I try to
e faccio
make
quello che c'è da fare
less
ovviamente.
plans and I do what I need to do and I try to adapt.
Mi stavo ricordando questo
And I was
perché
remembering this because
sono appena tornato da
I
questo
just came
viaggio di
back
viaggio
from
e
2 months of
è stata una
travel
bellissima esperienza
and I had this beautiful
per rispetto
experience
specifico.
from a very specific point of view
Evidentemente quando durante il periodo del
previously
Covid non ho
when
potuto viaggiare,
during
è
the
stata la prima
COVID
volta
period I
dopo
could not
almeno
travel
10 anni che
uh,
sono riuscito a stare un anno e mezzo senza
and it
viaggiare.
was the first time since when I was
Dopodiché
12 years old that I stayed for one whole year without
mi ero
traveling.
proposto voglio viaggiare meno, il meno
And I really
possibile,
enjoyed it. I
viaggiare
told
il
to
meno
myself, I want to
possibile,
travel much
pensando
less.
all'obiettivo e alla fine quello che succede è il
And
contrario.
and I
Fra un
put
mese mi
that as a
trovo di nuovo
goal,
in
but then what
Tokyo e
happens
devo
is the
fare
opposite. And
ancora
so in 1 month I'm about to
un
leave, and then I
po' alla
come back and I have to
fine.
leave again.
E questo mi riportava un
And this
pensiero
takes me back to a thought
che gran parte del nostro stress, della
that
nostra
most of our
ansietà, delle
stress,
conseguenze
tension,
della
and
nostra
consequently of our
sofferenza
suffering
e delle nostre reazioni
and of our reactions
non sono tanto causate da
are
situazioni,
not really so
usiamo il
much
termine
caused
anche
by
se sbagliato, però usiamo il
situations,
termine che in questo momento aiuta a passare l'idea, non tanto per le situazioni
not really about
oggettive,
objective situations,
ok?
which objective is not really the exact term,
Oggettivamente perché le
but
situazioni in cui ci
mostly
troviamo nella
because
vita
the situations in which we
non
find ourselves in
coincidono
life
con
don't really
la immagine
co-
idealizzata che noi
coincide
avevamo
with
di
the
come le
idealized
cose
image of how things
sarebbero dovute andare.
should have been, yeah.
E quindi questo succede due cose.
And then
Uno, noi
two
partiamo
things
da
happen.
questo
We
presupposto che non
we
ho
start from
idee
this
abbiamo. Ho fatto sta cosa, sono
preconcept
stato in
that
difficoltà,
I'm not really sure why we have it. I
in
think it's
qualche
more
modo
like
ne abbiamo
a defect
che
of
non è
factory.
strana.
And we have this strange
Quando
idea
io ho
that
una mia
when I
idea
have
di come le cose
my own
devono
idea
essere,
of how
quando
things
io
should be,
dovrei vederle in quel modo lì.
then they should more or less go like that.
Quindi io ho una mia aspettativa
So I
sulle
have a
cose.
certain
Certe volte noi
expectative,
non lo chiamiamo neanche aspettativa.
expectation.
Noi diciamo le
We don't
cose
really
come le
even
cose
call it
sono, così
expectation.
come le
It's
cose
just
dovrebbero essere,
we
le
call
cose
it that's
dovrebbero
how
andare così,
things should be,
queste
how
cose
things should
dovrebbero
go.
essere così, questa è la normalità.
This is normality,
Stranissimo,
which is also a very strange concept.
ma questo non è mica normale. Io mi sempre chiedo, ma che
But
cos'è
this is not
normale?
really normal, I always hear. But then I ask myself,
Perché
what
cosa è
is normal?
normale?
What do you mean
Di
by
solito noi
normal?
utilizziamo il termine normale per
Usually
ciò
we
che
use
rientra nelle
normal
nostre
to
aspettative,
mean something
dentro
that
la nostra visione di mondo,
enters, that is
dentro la
inside
nostra
our
idealizzazione
own
di
vision
come
of
le cose
world,
dovrebbero essere
of our own
o
idealized image of how
devono
things
essere.
should go, should be.
Però fatto sta che noi sviluppiamo
But in fact, we
attaccamento
develop
a
an
un'immagine
attachment
di
to
come le
an
cose
idea of
sono,
how
quando le cose
things
sono, le
are
cose
and
dovrebbero
of how
essere.
things should be.
E quando le cose non avvengono in quel
And so
modo,
when things
uno,
do not happen to
rimaniamo
be in that
male.
way, then
Due, c'è addirittura
we are
certe volte la
deluded
sensazione quasi come di un tradimento.
and
Uno
we
mi ha tradito
feel,
perché come le
in a
cose
way,
sono andate
betrayed,
così. Certe volte c'è la sensazione di
like
punizione.
a sort of feeling of punishment some other
Perché
times.
devo vivere
Why
questo?
do I have to live this?
No, mi è venuto in mente anche perché oggi, prima di entrare qua, ho appena
And it
ricevuto una
also came to my
telefonata.
mind because
Lasciami
before
stare.
entering here, I received a phone call,
Io
which,
ho bisogno
well, let's leave
del
it
sindaco del
at that. It
paese
was with the
per un
major
problema
of the
tecnico che
town
c'è.
close by for a technical problem at the center, and I tell myself, why?
Cosa dico?
things that then bring consequences one after the other. Just leave it. I don't want to annoy you with this. And other things come to my mind, but in fact, there are things which are not really going as we expect. And so here there are two realities. One, okay, I have my own expectation, my own projections, and then I try to make some kind of plans at the best of our own, of one own possibility capacities. And even if he tries to keep the expectation really low, then he really has a hard time to match what exactly happens. It's like trying to predict the result of an equation without knowing all the numbers. The probability that we guess right is very, very low. But the strange thing is that when I say that the result should be 22 and the result comes and it's 34, it's not like I tell myself, ah, look, I didn't see this and that, I couldn't predict. Ah, no, we say it's wrong, the result is wrong.
O no?
Or not?
Vi siete mai detti, ma questo non doveva succedere così?
Have you ever said, this shouldn't have happened this way, this shouldn't be in this way?
No? Mi vengono in mente delle cose di questi giorni, ma
things of these days come to my mind, and I really call them absurdities, especially some laws. Well, just let it go. But when something happens and we say, it shouldn't have happened this way, it shouldn't be this way, then what I always say to myself, if it can, then, yeah, well, if it is, then it's because it can. Well, then I say, okay, I rather if it wouldn't be like that. Well, I agree. But when the result of an equation is a certain result, it's because all the parts involved have taken to that result.
Io credo che parte della nostra sofferenza
I think that part of our suffering,
non è tanto il fatto che
it's
le
not
cose
really
non vadano come
the
noi
fact
ci
that
aspettiamo,
things don't go as we expect them to go,
ma il fatto che
but the
noi
fact
durante la
that
vita
we, during our life,
cerchiamo di
we
trovare
try
la nostra certezza,
to
la
find
nostra
our certainty,
tranquillità,
our own stability,
la nostra sicurezza
our safety
in una realtà intorno a noi che corrisponde
in
a
an
quello che
external
siamo.
reality that should
Faccio
match
un'analogia.
what we think it should be. Like,
Parto per un viaggio
I make an
in
analogy.
barca.
So I leave for a trip or a journey on a boat,
Diciamo parto per un viaggio in barca a vela.
on a sailboat,
Come
let's
faccio
say.
per partire sereno?
How can I live like
Non
calmly?
ho voglia mica di star male nel viaggio, eccetera, eccetera.
I don't want to
Vedere prima il
feel bad
meteo,
during the journey, so
capire bene,
first I look at
studiare
the
bene gli
weather,
elementi,
I
dico
try
nel
to
mare,
study
studio tutto, dico devo arrivare da
the
questo posto a
currents.
quello, eccetera, eccetera. Però posso avere la totale certezza
But can I have
che
the
le
total
correnti
certainty
mi
that the
aspettano,
currents
che andrà
will
come mi
go
aspetto,
as I
nelle
expect them to
tempeste
go, that there will be no
piuttosto che
storms,
sarà il vento giusto, eccetera,
that there will be
eccetera.
the right wind,
Chiunque
and
può
so
dare
on?
questa
Can
certezza.
anyone give me this certainty?
Se io sto lì ad aspettare questa certezza per
If I
partire,
stay there
non parto.
and wait for this certainty to leave, then I will never leave.
Che cosa mi può dare la serenità?
What can give me serenity to live?
Non la certezza che
Not the
tutto andrà
certainty
bene,
that everything will go
ma
right,
sì la fiducia nelle
but
mie
yes,
risorse, nella mia
the
capacità di
trust
saper veleggiare
in
quando c'è tanto
the
vento,
trust
quando
in
c'è
my
poco vento, se c'è la
capacity
tempesta, so quello che voglio
of
fare
being
in
able
questo, quando
to
siamo in casa,
sail,
ci sia la tempesta, ho i mezzi per
whether there
affrontarla,
is a storm or the wrong wind, but then I will be able to manage also that situation. Maybe it will take longer, maybe 2 months instead of 1 week, but I will have the means to face it. So the more I know, I am aware that I have the resources to face what is about to come, the more I can have serenity in the departure. The more I try to find my serenity in a control of the external conditions. I create illusions. I create stories. I look at the weather and I say, oh, but the weather say that it should have been alright, but it's not like that. This shouldn't be like that. This shouldn't be like that. Shouldn't. But the reality of facts is that the union of causes and conditions brought things to be in a certain way. This doesn't mean that there aren't difficult conditions that we have a hard time to face, but mostly to accept, because the fact that I accept a certain situation doesn't take out the fact that there is effort and there is a difficult situation. But clearly, if I complain about certain difficulty, I have twice the difficulty. But it doesn't take away the fact that I still have to face it. So I'm not saying that you accept and then it's alright. It's not that. But there is a very strong part in our own life where we generate tension, stress, suffering, because we cannot accept life with everything that comes with it. Because then what happens is that not only we don't accept what happens, but we also develop a certain fear of what should happen. Because if when I depart for a journey, put my own serenity in external conditions, like the weather and things like that, then the next time, and things don't go as I planned, then the next time I will leave, I would be more scared, because I will think, oh, what if this happens like the other time, and this and that. Uncertainty generates tension. From a physical point of view, uncertainty augments cortisol and generates stress, which generates inflammation. So if we go and look, most of the diseases that are the most common today, including cancer, are caused by chronic inflammations, which in reality there is a very interesting thing in this, and the first time that I understood this, it really hit me, that every time that we need to take a decision, a certain amount of stress is generated. The cortisol quantity increases. So if this is whether it's a very important decision, like which university should I take, or like a stupid decision like what dress should I wear, the cortisol increases anyway. But the more I stay into that indecision, the more the cortisol increases and the stress increases. And so, for example, I observed many times at the restaurant, when you observe the menu, you look at the menu and you don't know what to order. What is the internal feeling? Relaxation or tension? There is a little tension, right? And what happens at the time that you make the order? Now we can talk, now we can relax. But this is a very practical example that a lot of us have experienced, certainly many times, with which we can see that every time that there is a moment of uncertainty, what should I do? I don't know, and I remain on that, and that generates tension, generates stress. And then what happens? The more we are in an alert situation, the more cortisol we have, the less our capacity of comprehension, of reasoning, of mental clarity, and so on. And so, what happens is that if I am about to leave for a journey and I start to put 1,000 possibilities in front of myself. Oh, what if this happens or that happens? What if the wind comes from east or from west? Look, that time there was someone and a whale came here. And so, in front of all these possibilities, an internal feeling of tension is generated. And if this happens, and if it goes like that, and the more this increases, the less diminishes our capacity of making an aware decision.
Io vi parlo della mia esperienza personale.
I talk about my own personal experience. Very few times I manage to predict things in a way that it's quite satisfying. Mostly, even though in the general view I can manage, there are so many details that that's impossible. And this is everywhere in our health, in our own relationships, at work, during a journey. In everything that we do, we never have the real control of what happens, how and when. There are people that come and ask for prayers, asking for help, and they seem that they are going to die today, and then 20 years pass and they're still there. There are those that seem like they're going to live forever, and then after 2 days they are not there anymore. We do not really know how things will go. Really, we don't. I had many examples of this kind. Situations that just something happens that is not inside our vision of it. So something really important to try to bring back serenity is somehow to comprehend, accept, and live without trying to have less control of the world around us. And having less control doesn't mean to not make plans, to organize. No, it means that I have my own idea, but I know that it's my idea, my vision. It's not what will happen or what should happen. I try sometimes to apply this with the use of speech, because speech influences the way of thinking.
Ma perché non sei ancora convinto? No, io sono convinto. Ma che cosa succede da qui a domani? Non lo so. Quindi a principio di cose sì, ci sarò, lo farò.
So if someone asks me, Lama, what do you think about this?
Io sono convinto, l'ho deciso, per me è così, c'è qua scritto, è messo quello, però
I try to give like a positive view, but I don't have the total certainty. And I see that if we apply this in our own vocabulary, in our own way of speaking, it also helps to direct the mind. Because at the beginning, to direct our own energy, then I can say something positive. I can say, yes, we will see tomorrow, I will see you tomorrow, but then from here to tomorrow, then I cannot really predict what will happen completely. And so this also brings us to two collateral positive effects. One is to give more value to the present moment, because I do not know if tomorrow we will be together here. I really do not have way to know it, and so I have to live it fully. I have to give the best that I have. I need to make the best out of the situations, and it's not just for saying. There are two things that I used to make at a certain period with Lama Gangchen, and it seemed that it could have gone on forever to go to Borobudur, to Tibet, and then one day something happens and boom, finished. And one stays like that with the finger on the mouth. How? But it was so beautiful. It was. But if I had known, then I would have gone that year. If I had known, then I would have done a lot of things differently. And even worse, if one would say, if I was at that time the way that I am now, I would do differently. Well, yes, obviously. Because we look back at the past and we say, I didn't do right in that time. But did I have at that time the mind that I have today, the resources, the awareness? No, so I did what I could with the resources that I had at that time. And the thing that we need to avoid is not really the fact of making mistakes, which is part of life. But when we say, look, if at that time I had known, I would have acted differently, I would have lived it in a better way. Or better, I didn't live the past with the right intensity, I wasn't present because I was with my mind in the future. So now that I am present, I don't live the present well because I have my mind in the past. It's also a little bit a sentence that I heard many times. At the time, if I had known how lucky I was, I would have lived that time differently because that opportunity is finished. But at the present time, we are doing the same exact thing. We are repeating a past that is not there anymore, and we don't live the present. And so, one of the things in accepting this complex interdependency and this real awareness that we are a very tiny part in a great equation, we do our part. And personally, this brings me a state of relaxation. And I call it relaxation of the certainty of the uncertainty. I direct myself in a certain way, which doesn't mean to not have plans, to not have goals. So in Buddhism, it's very important to have goals, a direction. It's part of the path. I have an idealized image of what I want to be, not what I have to be, what I want to be, which is very different. One thing is to direct myself towards what I want to become, and I do the best that I can. embracing the present moment and what I am now. But this doesn't have to do only with what I am, but with life in general. I remember, for example, a very strong moment when Lama Gangchen Rinpoche left the body. It wasn't for me a trivial moment, it was a very important time. And I remember one of the things, because when someone close to us, which is really important for us, dies, there is an emotional part, right? Naturally. Which doesn't have to be neglected or put aside, but this doesn't take away the possibility of directing oneself and finding a way to deal with it. So when he left the body, it was during the COVID time, and I remember well what I said. We don't unite in the pain, but in the gratitude. We are not united here because we're all suffering, but because we have all gratitude for Lama Gangchen Rinpoche. This doesn't take away the fact that there is an emotional part, a strong emotional part, there is sadness involved, but the reality is also that to give names to our feelings is not so obvious. There are also scientific studies that show that we usually give names to feelings according to the context in which we find ourselves. So it's also not so obvious to say, oh, I feel this or I feel that. It's not so simple. And so it's also important to embrace what we feel and not think that, okay, or someone close to me has died, I have to suffer. I can feel the lack of someone, but then I can still direct myself to a feeling of gratitude. And if I miss the other person, then it's because I cared about him.
Oh no.
Because if someone dies that it's bothering me all the time, from morning to evening, then if that person is not there, then makes my life lighter, no? But if there is a situation for me that is difficult, and I really miss the other person because it was important, then I can say, how beautiful that it was there, that it happened. So if I'm thirsty and I drink a glass of water and it's finished, then I say, so nice, but then it's over and I'm glad that it was there. So this doesn't take away the emotional, the sadness. Emotions need to be welcomed, but our minds need to be directioned. And so both things are there, the sadness and also the gratitude, the rejoicing, seeing the fact that, wow, beautiful that I had these possibilities. It's very important to direct ourselves, because also in our memories then that taste remains there. So for example, I feel extremely lucky that when the most person in my life, that was Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, left the body, I connected myself profoundly with a feeling of gratitude. And so when I remember that those moments, which were not easy, the taste that I have is a feeling of gratitude, of warmth, not a feeling of resentment, of pain. this doesn't take away the fact that there was indeed missing the other person, the sadness. And so sometimes we try to have clarity inside ourselves, but we are also made up of contradictions. The fact that I feel gratitude, and so that gratitude is somehow connected to a feeling of joy. How beautiful that it happened, that it was there, doesn't take away the fact that I feel bad because I'm sorry that it has finished. So one thing doesn't take away the other. And it's beautiful to allow oneself, or at least for me, I see that it's very beautiful to allow oneself to be contradictory. And leave one thing, and yes, there is also the other thing, and allowing the two aspects to exist, or maybe three or four. I can choose which one I want to nourish and which one I want to let go and pass away. Because if I don't allow myself for this contradiction, then I identify myself with a certain feeling or the other, and so I hide a part of what I'm feeling. And what happens is that that thing works underneath and it explodes. Or what happens, I collapse at a certain point. And so I see, yes, there is this and that, and then I can decide which one I want to nourish. There is an interesting thing here, like I think it happened to everyone to be in a certain context and feeling the need to talk and saying our own. And I remember Lama Michel Rinpoche talking about when he came first to the West and he couldn't really speak almost a word of English, and people saw him and felt a connection with him and wanted to talk with him, and he listened to them, and eventually he just said, "No problem," and the other, "What do you mean, no problem? This and that." Yes, no problem, really. And after a while, people came back. A week later, 10 days. "Oh, really? Look, I feel better. It wasn't that bad. Thank you." And what he told me is that he sees the importance of being there for the other with openness and stability. If I don't feel well and I go to speak with someone and I find a person that welcomes me with affection, I don't really need so much for the other person to understand what I'm saying. I need to be welcomed. And this already helps me to elaborate what I need. And this is the same process that we also make with ourselves. When I say to accept our contradictions, it means to listen, to welcome that there is this, but there is also that. I like you, but sometimes I want to slap you. There is one part, but there is also the other. There are contradictory feelings. When we allow ourselves to listen to them and not hide them or refuse them, then the simple fact that they are listened to, it's enough to make them quiet. There is the necessity of listening. I don't know if I am explaining myself well. And this is something that, first of all, we can make with ourselves. And so it's normal that we have expectations. It's normal that we put our own ideas in front of us, made whether aware or in an unaware way. Some ideas come out of common view of the world. Also, for example, we have a certain idea of the time, the age at which a person should die. And so when a person dies, we ask, oh, how old was he or she? That's because we think we have the idea that he should have a certain lifespan, and so if he had a certain age, then we say, but look, he was old, so he already lived a life. If he was young, but he was so young. And because there is like something that tells us that he went in a wrong way, that he shouldn't have gone that way. This is an expectation, an image that we have of life that is idealized. Death has no age. There is a Tibetan text that I read once. There is even who dies before being born. There is no age for death. There isn't a standard age. And the problem also is not dying, is living badly. Because for me, when someone dies, the question is not how old was he or she, it's how he or she lived. But I wanted to highlight the fact that we have idealized images that come also from the cultural context, from the view of the world that we inherited.
Consapevole su quello, ci sono.
And even if we don't think about it with awareness, then they are still there. There are many things in our way of living that we inherited from our parents, from the cultural context, from everything, from the people that came before us. We inherited a lot of things in our own vision of the world. And so we have this. At the same time, we can have a contradictory feeling, which is to understand that is illusory, this. To comprehend, for example, the fact that yes, I know that people are supposed to live like an average age, but then to also know that death has no age and I cannot have the control of things and I cannot predict how things should be. These are two feelings that are contradictory, and we have to allow ourselves to have both of them, and so to know which one I want to nourish. Because if I try to develop a certain vision and trying to remove the other, most of the time we will not be able to do that, because we have the assumption that to see impermanence, for example, I have to stop to see things as being permanent, but if I have to wait that, and if I say yes, in a non-conceptual way, I believe that things are somewhat permanent, then I still understood that things are impermanent, and I nourish that vision, even if contradictory. So even if I felt bad for something that happened, but at the same time I can accept that and say I don't have control on anything, and there are aspects from which I can learn and things that I can develop, and there are also positive aspects. One thing don't take away the other, and I can choose which one to nourish. There is a person that I have to do in my life, that I have to deal with in my life. There are feelings that I don't like, things that I like, and I can choose which ones I want to nourish, but still I have to listen to them. And so the more we manage to see that we are very small in front of the whole. So the image of before leaving for a journey, I have the ocean in front of me, and I am so small compared to it, and I cannot expect myself to have the control on the waves, on the currents, of the storm, on the wind. It's foolish. One that lives with a boat and pretends to expects to have the control on everything. What do we say to this person? Well, you are an idiot. But if someone lives serene, saying, well, I learned to sail well, I had my times of difficulty, I managed to go beyond them, and so what will happen? Well, I will be able to face it, which doesn't mean it will be easy, but I will have the means. And for me, the courage is not in the fact of not seeing the danger, but it's in the trust, in the capacity to face it. And this is what can bring serenity in our life. And the uncertainty of the future is also beautiful in a way. I don't know how many things have happened to you that you would never expect it. A lot to me. Some of them that I would have rather if they didn't happen, but many others that were very beautiful. But there are also things that, when experienced, are not pleasant, but then open doors to very beautiful and important things. And so if I think about myself, when I was 24 years old and I left the studies in India and I came to Italy for a very difficult situation, unpleasant, without getting into details, you know? A difficult time. Maybe, perhaps if I look at my past, that was one of the most difficult times. But if I think about myself today, that is what allowed me to live beautiful years with Lama Gangchen, to go and study in Tibet, and to meet masters, which gave me really a lot and took me to experiences which otherwise I would have never made. And so if I look at that, I say thank you. But was it easy? No. So on one side, I remember, for example, I came back from Borobudur. I was a kid, and I made a prayer while I was there, profoundly inside of me. And I said to myself, in my life, everything is alright. I didn't have particular problems. I was going along with everyone. I wasn't missing anything, and I got worried with that. And I say to myself, how can I help someone else in the future if I didn't live those difficulties myself? How can I help someone else to face a certain difficulty if I didn't have that certain difficulty? It was enough to ask, because after that many situations started to happen of various kinds. And so if someone tells me, oh yeah, I'm in a time of my life where everything is going well, I say to him or her, well, enjoy it, because it's not going to last very long. And so there is also the wisdom to enjoy, to rejoice of the present moment when things are going well. Because sometimes, even then, we are busy with what could happen in the future. So if I look at what happened, I see many situations that I would rather if they didn't happen. And so, for example, there are some health issues that I have that are definitely related with some things that I still didn't digest because they were strong and it takes time. But even if it is like that, by seeing all the other doors that a certain situation opened to me and that allowed me to live, then I say thank you. I'm really grateful for what I was able to live, what I was able to do. And so, when we find ourselves in front of uncertainty and we do not know what will happen, there are so many opportunities, infinite. The important thing is to let lose the grip on thinking to have control, because that really generates a state of tension, constant, without losing direction, without losing the objective, and also a sentence that I said many times, having a high expectation and high objectives is a constant effort. Most of the time we have like high expectations, objective not so clear, effort low, then of course the result is what it is. And so having an objective, but then also to live it with serenity, because our own life also is like a journey. We find places, people, we live situations, also with the encounter, the getting to know ourselves. The ego of now is not the same of 10 days ago or 10 years. And so life is also a path, a journey. And to be able to follow this journey in a serene way, first of all, we need not to have fear of the future, of where I'm going. And in order to not have fear of the future, then I need to make peace with the past. And this is fundamental. As long as I stay there and think, if I did this or if I did that, if I live with the past, with pain, with difficulty, then I will not be able to live the present well and also the future. Because if there is pain in the past, then I also project it in the future, and this is normal. Because when we have a difficult experience, we don't want to repeat it, and so we stay there and imagine. An example that I gave many times of this, of something that happened here at Kunpen many years ago. One day it happens on a Wednesday. It was very hot. I was very thirsty. I take the water to drink it, and it was extremely salty. I act as if nothing happened, because I didn't want for the people that took care of this to feel bad about it. And at the end, I call the people that were here at the center, taking care of things. Come here, this water, try it. No, but the water, we took it from the bottle. No, try it. It was very salty. How? I don't know. So eventually there was Linda, which was doing some treatment for psoriasis, and he brought water from the sea. And by chance, it was in the bottles of the same brand of the bottles that are usually here. And so someone took it by mistake. But of all this story, the most important point is that a week after that, when I came back here,
Guarda che è tutto a posto. Io ero concettualmente
So
totalmente
they
sicuro
told me, oh look Lama, we checked the water,
ma quando sono
it's
andato a
alright.
vedere, l'ho bevuto
So
ancora 2 giorni
conceptually,
prima.
I was sure there was not water from the sea, but when I was about to drink it,
Prima. Perché
I could not trust it fully and I had to try it before drinking it.
più forte la nostra esperienza che la nostra conoscenza.
Because our own experience talks,
Per questo se io non
speaks
sono in pace
louder
con il
than
mio
our
passato,
knowledge.
inevitabilmente
So if I am not at peace with the past, I will inevitably project it in the future. Inevitably.
Ed è molto importante
And it's very important to gradually
mettersi in pace col passato, che vuol dire perdonare,
make peace with the past, which means also to forgive, to accept, to be grateful, and to create also the space to digest what we live.
Se noi non facciamo questo con una certa...
But if we don't do this with a certain
Arriva un giorno che vediamo lì, c'è da digerire tutta quella roba lì,
with a certain constancy, then
come si fa
one day we find ourselves in front of a huge elephant to digest. How can we digest an elephant with small pieces? But it takes a long time.
continuiamo a generare altre.
And so, while we are trying to digest those emotional things, we create others, and so.
Sette cose da fare tutti i giorni.
So Buddha, for example, said,
In particolar
gave 7 things to do every day,
quando noi vogliamo avere un
and
buon
especially 7 things when we want to have a good relationship with someone. And these 7 things need to be repeated possibly every day in our own relationship with our guru, with our spiritual guide, because it is such an important relationship. We need to nourish it well.
contesti della nostra vita. Però la realtà è che sono così importanti che nel tempo, nella tradizione buddista, sono diventati rituale.
And these 7 things are so important that eventually in the Buddhist tradition they became a ritual.
Per non dimenticare
And so in Buddhism the things that are considered to be very important are repeated and then become rituals. And what happens is that sometimes we repeat things just without really listening to the meaning. And so, for example, every day I have to do the prayers of the 7 branches, and okay, done. All I did was repeating the verses of the 7 branches, but I didn't actually do them. What are the 7 branches, the 7 things to do? They are about the things to do in cultivating the relationship with the other. And so, in making peace with the past, many of our conflicts are about our relationships, our personal issues. And so I invite you to observe these things, these 7 things in relationships. The first point is that when we meet someone, we pay homage to that person. We recognize the presence of the other person. So imagine like entering a place where there is a person and you don't even say hi or anything. Then how will that person feel? Like it doesn't exist. So in my tradition, if there is an important person that enters the room, I get up, because if I don't do that, I feel like I'm not really paying attention to your presence. And when I pay homage is when I recognize your qualities and and I praise you verbally, physically, mentally. We shake hands, for example, we say something, good morning, like, okay, you're there. And traditionally this is called making prostrations, because when this was transmitted, it's mostly with the spiritual guide, and when you go and meet the spiritual guide, the thing that you do to pay homage is to make prostrations. So I go a bit fast, because if I go too long on the first, then we don't get to the third. So the second point is making offerings, making a gift, materialize something that we feel. So I come to see you, to come to meet you. So in the Eastern or Tibetan tradition, you never go meet someone barehanded. So Tibetan, for example, found a shortcut for this, and they always bring katas, which are like these scarves, and you use them for everything, when someone is born, when you go meet a friend, or when you go meet the guru, so you're never empty-handed. So another thing that I like for Tibetans, okay, you have to leave for a trip, for example on a Thursday, but astrologically maybe that Thursday is a very bad day for traveling. So what do? In our own mentality, what would we do? Or either we don't care about the astrological thing, or we change the ticket, right? The Tibetans, no, they have a third option. They keep the journey on Thursday, but they start the trip on Wednesday, like leaving house on Wednesday and maybe going to see a friend. Okay, so the trip started a day earlier. And then, yes, I also take the trip, the flight. But yeah, there is this fact of never coming to meet someone empty-handed. And so someone also told me, when there was the earthquake in Nepal, people went there with the helicopter, also to help in villages. Like 80 or 90% of the houses were completely destroyed, and the local people were receiving those that were coming to give help by offering something, and they were really shocked by that, because they didn't expect it. They are used to the fact that when you go to give humanitarian help, then the local people complain because you didn't come on time. And so people there were feeling bad. You were in a bad situation, but they came there with gratitude, offering what they had, also just hot water, because you never receive someone empty-handed, or you never go to someone empty-handed, whether it's a flower or a glass of water. So also in Tibetan culture, you go to the house of someone and they bring you water, beer, something. And so the second point is to offer, to share. Because offering means sharing. I'm taking something that I have and I share it with you. This also has another meaning. When we live something pleasant together, that already helps to loosen the knots. For example, Lama Gangchen gave this advice when there are familiar conflicts to send flowers. And I remember one, the power when the other receives the flowers, but also the difficulty of sending the flowers. Am I ready to do this? I am in conflict with that person, there is difficulty, oh, what would the other person think? Am I ready to do this? And when I am able to take these acts, there is a power in this. The third point, which is fundamental, and we need to repeat every day, whether in the relationship with others or not, it's to clean the past. So with someone, it's like, oh, I realized that yesterday I did this, I thought about that, I ask forgiveness. Also in Tibetan, there is the concept of forgiving, but not of asking forgiveness, because I can forgive, but it doesn't depend on whether the other asks for forgiveness or not. Even though, so the point is being at peace with the past, cleaning the past. So for me, it happened, for example, that I didn't do something with intention to harm the other person, not at all, but some behaviors in the interaction caused harm eventually. And so in these situations, I found myself going to the other person, look, I'm sorry, whatever I did, and in particular this and that, for which you felt bad, I'm sorry. I will do my best to not repeat it, even though it was not in my intention, but it doesn't justify the fact that what I did didn't work out. And so sometimes this means to make peace with the past. And a very powerful thing is to admit our own mistakes without going into the guilt, the sense of guilt. I just have to recognize that what I did was not right, because I don't want to repeat it. And because at the same time I want to clear away the tensions. And so it's not necessary that the other person forgives us, but it's necessary that we ourselves recognize that what we did was not right, and that we generate the intention of not repeating it. We learn from it. But at the same time, with this process of being at peace with the past, which is also called purification, another important step is to embrace, to welcome ourselves. I see myself of the past, of yesterday or 10 years ago, or whatever, and I welcome that thing that was done. Not saying, kind of like victimizing what happened, but just saying, I did what I did at the best of my capacities in the conditions that I found myself in, and I was not able to do anything different. But luckily, I can see it. I can generate the commitment to not repeat it, and I take the responsibilities for what I done. It's not because my intention was not to make any harm, but my behavior made harm. And I take the commitment to making a peace with the past, to forgive, and first of all, we with ourselves, and then also with others. And when we are in a relationship with another person, maybe like once a week you say, okay, shall we clean the week? That wouldn't be too bad, right? Ah, look, Monday I say that thing to you, I wasn't feel very right. Yesterday happened to me, something happens to me and I feel bad about it. And I say, you shouldn't have done this. And I stay there a bit. And yeah, I also saw the person, but I I decided, okay, I'm not going to talk with the other person, and I say, well, this is not a good moment. This happens rarely, but then it happened. And so yesterday I talked very long with that person and about other things, and then that person said, "Oh, I have to confess you something." I know, and then after that, it just got cleaned away, and we were able to move on. But we need to do this with a certain constancy, because otherwise, after a while, we realize that we don't even want to see the other person, and because like things accumulate one thing after the other, and but with a certain frequency, we need to do this. So in an intimate or in a family relationship, we have this thing that, oh, because we are together and you're my child, husband, wife, I take for granted that you're there. But no, I I try to come towards you and cultivate a relationship. I ask forgiveness for the things that didn't go right, and I go clean the past. And the fourth point, which is very important and it's probably more rare than the third, is to celebrate the past. The term that is used here is to rejoice. We don't really have it a lot in our vocabulary, but it's easier to understand with celebrating. So you do it like once a week, you say, oh, what were the beautiful things that we did this week that we want to repeat? What was positive about it? Because if we don't also verbalize the beautiful things in time, we also forget them, and then in the future maybe it also seems that there is only the bad, the negative, but it is also very important to celebrate the beautiful things. I'm making a trivial example. I go and eat at a restaurant. At the end of dinner, how was the lunch or dinner? Look, the pasta was very great. The second, the the meat was not so good. So you rejoice of one, and okay, and you say we should do differently with the other, and not repeat it. But it's important to see one thing in a certain way, and the other in the other, and to celebrate the small victories. And it may seem strange, but it's more difficult to celebrate the beautiful things than to point the finger at the bad things. We're not very used to do it. But it's very, very important, remembering that, keeping in mind that one thing doesn't take away the other. The fact that I see the beautiful aspects and I go to celebrate them, it doesn't take away the fact that I also see the bad aspects and I want to take them away. We need not to generalize on one side or the other. Look, we did this together, we understood this, we had that beautiful moment of sharing. We rejoice of the beautiful things. And also of with ourselves. Like at the end of the day, maybe we can say, what are the things that went well that I want to repeat and that I want to celebrate? What are the things that I don't want to repeat? I stayed in the traffic for 2 hours and I didn't get angry. This morning I woke up and I managed to sit and meditate and have a moment of awareness. How beautiful. But we need to verbalize things, otherwise they just pass away. The fifth and the sixth point can have inversed order, depends. So the fifth is when I go to the other and I say what I expect from you. So for example, if I go to a dentist, what do you expect from him? That he takes good care of my teeth. Look, that time. Okay, I say hi to the dentist. When we have another person in front of us, what do we expect from that person? What do we expect from the father, from the husband, the wife, the friends? Are there any expectations? There is also a sutra from Buddha, which is called the Singalovada Sutra. One day I take the commitment to look it together. It's the Sutra of the Six Directions, where Buddha explains that each person has 6 different relationships, mostly in life in general. And in each one of them there are duties and rights. So there is the relationship towards parents, towards children, towards the wife or husband, towards teachers, towards the spiritual guide, towards the employer or the employee. How many did I just say? Did someone count them? 7. Okay, there should be 6, but somehow in the sutra there are 6, but they comprehend all of this. And so the point is that in each relationship there are duties and rights. So, and they are about what I expect from you and what I'm supposed to give to you. And this is the basis for a healthy relationship. And when does our relationship start to become more conflictual? When one of the two has the feeling of taking more than, or of giving more than is being taken, or the other way around. So what do I expect from you? I want this. What do I expect from a friend? I expect you to be loyal, to trust you, that when the times are difficult, then you're there to listen. Or do I expect that anytime that I need money, you give it to me? I don't know. It depends on the expectation that I have. So it's very important. What do I expect from you? What do I expect from this place, this situation, from the person? And it's clear that inside what I offer, inside of this, I also offer the other person what he expects from me. 6th point is, for how long do we want this relationship to go on, to continue? So, for example, I expect this from you, but for 6 months, like a sort of contract. In the contract there is the object of the contract and the duration. I can say, what do I expect from you? I expect that we stay in this relationship as long as these conditions are there. It's a time that I can give. Or I can say, I want to remain in relationship with you from now until all lives, and this happens with the relationship with the guru, to say, I expect you to guide me to enlightenment, and for how long? As long as I get, until I get there. So if I go to the dentist or to a doctor, I expect the doctor to give the right diagnosis, to take good care of my health, as long until I will be feeling well. But if a doctor is not taking good care of me and I don't see consideration, then I won't go to that doctor. I have a legal problem, I go to a lawyer. What do you expect from you? Do you give me the right indications for how long? Until the process, the cause is over. The lawsuit is over. And the seventh point, which in general goes like a bit like that quickly, what is the purpose of this relationship? And here is often used the term of dedication. Okay. So yes, it's true that we are in this relationship for this reason, and we go well together. But what is the final purpose? What is the dedication of this? Okay, maybe I want to dedicate this relationship so that there is health, that I can learn something, that another person feels well, so that I can contribute to the society that I'm in. What do I want to dedicate? And this makes it so that the relationship becomes a means and not an end. And it's wonderful when it happens. Because when something is a mean in itself, an end in itself, then when there are difficulties, the first reaction is to want to leave it. But if it's a mean for an end, then it becomes broader. So in an intimate relationship, a partnership, and there is the vision, the family is more important, or the social status is more important.
Se quello rapporto esiste al fine di farmi star bene,
then if I have that end, then when there are difficulties, I will be able to face them. But if the relationship is an end in its own, then I will give up, probably. And this doesn't have to do only with relationships with other people, but with people in general. And so, for example, I wake up in the morning and I pay homage to what I respect. I offer something to the world. I make offerings to the other beings, to the gurus, to whom I pay respect to. And possibly, if not every day, at least sometimes, to go back and see the things in my past that I want to fix, what are the things that I still need to digest, and allow oneself the time to do them, to do it. So, for example, there is the mantra of purification of Vajrasattva of 100 syllables. Sometimes I have the feeling that when you say that you repeat the mantra for 100,000 times, it's like some magic. When you reach the 100,000 time, then everything gets immediately purified. But what is actually meant with that number 100,000 is the fact that the process is long and it takes time to purify the past, and I need to make things to dedicate to that, and I need to dedicate time to celebrate the past. Is as important as cleaning the past, if not more. What do I expect from life? What do I offer? What do I dedicate this life to? Because living one's own life, not as an end, but as a mean, it's a huge gift.
Non so se è chiaro questo concetto.
I don't know if it's clear, this concept.
Quando io guardo il mondo intorno a me,
When I look at the world around me,
ovviamente noi
obviously
vediamo quello che possiamo vedere.
we see what we can see.
Vediamo quello che
In other
è
words,
davanti ai nostri occhi.
we see what's in front of our eyes.
Non vedere quello
We
che non è
cannot
davanti ai
see
nostri
what's not in front of our
occhi.
own
Noi
eyes.
viviamo comunque in un'epoca dove le
And
informazioni
we live
che
in a,
abbiamo
at a, in a,
riguardo
in a
ciò che
time
accade nel mondo, eccetera, eccetera,
where the information
evidentemente
about what happens in the world are predominantly negative.
quindi esiste una visione
And so
difficile del mondo.
there is a difficult
Quando io
vision
guardo intorno
of the
a me,
world.
io vedo di quelle cose che
When I look around me, I see
veramente rimango,
many things that
non so neanche che parole utilizzare.
I don't even know what word to use here.
La mia conclusione è che quello di cui questo mondo
My
più ne ha
conclusion
bisogno
is that what this world needs the most is people
che siano in se
that
stessi un
are
esempio, più che un esempio, che siano amore,
an example,
rispetto,
but more than an example,
stabilità,
that are
gioia, saggezza.
love,
Abbiamo bisogno di
patience,
persone mature,
generosity, of
persone
mature
sane,
people, of
di
healthy
esseri
people,
sani, di esseri
sane.
maturi, sani. Quello è quello di cui più abbiamo bisogno.
That's what we need the
Stanno
most.
impazzendo,
When everyone is
se
going
rimane uno
crazy,
sano, almeno speranza
if
c'è.
someone sane remains, then at least there is
Neanche
some
più uno
hope.
sano.
If there is not
I
even
pazzi
one,
uno fra tutti i pazzi deve rimpazzire un'altra volta, magari in qualche modo, no? Però se rimane uno sano, almeno quello poi può riportare alla sanità.
but if there is at least one, then it can bring back the others to sanity.
Adesso di esseri sani, equilibrati, stabili,
So the world really needs
amorevoli,
balanced,
quello
joyful,
di cui più ne abbiamo.
full of love people.
E quindi,
That's what we need the most.
quando io vedo la mia propria vita,
And so when I look at my own life
io non ho controllo di ciò che accade.
developing in front of
Io
me,
non so veramente cosa accadrà, come andrà, come non andrà, eccetera, eccetera.
I do not really know how it
Ci sono
will
diverse
go.
cose che succedono che non vanno come io
There are
avrei
many
sperato.
things that happen that don't go as I expect them to be.
Ma in mezzo a
Many
tutto
beautiful
questo,
things, many other things
ogni
not so
cosa
easy
che
to
vivo
face,
mi
to
va a
accept.
trasformare, mi
But
va
all
a
these
preservare.
things,
E io voglio vivere
they
queste situazioni
transform me,
come un
they
mezzo per
shape me,
permettermi
and
di
I want to
essere
live
una
these
persona migliore.
situations so that I can transform myself to be a better person for this world.
Perché a questo punto
Because
le
at this
situazioni che
point,
noi abbiamo hanno un
the
senso.
situations, if seen with this perspective,
C'è
have
stato il
a
problema
meaning,
di questo, di
a
quell'altro,
sense.
eccetera, eccetera.
Ah, there was
Sì,
this problem or
però io ho
that.
potuto
Yes,
affrontare
but I was
le mie
able
proprie
to
debolezze,
face
i miei
my
conflitti.
own weaknesses,
Sono
my
una
own
persona più
conflicts.
stabile
Now I'm a more
riguardo 6 mesi
stable
fa,
person compared
prima
to
che
6 months
succedesse
ago
quello.
before that happened.
Che quindi quello che ho vissuto
Okay,
ha un
so
senso per me.
what I
Oggi
lived
sono una persona migliore.
has some meaning for me.
Invece
Now I
oggi
am a
sono
better
una persona
person.
che ha accumulato più rabbia, più rancore,
Ah,
eccetera,
no,
eccetera.
or instead, today I'm a person that has
Quindi io
accumulated more anger, more rank, and so it's better to not repeat that.
Ma la
That's
domanda
not
che c'è non
right.
è tanto quello che faccio, ma
But
in che
the
modo mi
question
trasformo
is not
per
what
lui
is there, what happens, but how I transform myself for the
perché
world
meglio che
where I
posso
live in.
offrire al mondo
Because the best that I can
è
offer
ciò
to
che
the
sono,
world
più che ciò
is
che
what I
faccio.
am, more
Anche
than
il
what I
peggio che
do.
posso offrire al mondo, se per me.
Also the worst could be.
Perciò avere questo come obiettivo.
And so having this as a goal.
Mi, mi ricordo una volta un testo di Socrate.
I remember
Parlava
a
di
text
questo.
from
Quando tu
Socrates.
hai
When you
un
have
obiettivo
a
nella tua
goal
vita
in your life,
chiaro,
clear
vedi le
goal,
cose tramite quella prospettiva.
then you
Allora
see
a volte penso,
things
che
through
cosa è
that
più importante
perspective.
per te?
What is more
Che le cose
the most
vadano come
important
tu
thing for you?
vuoi
The
o diventare una
things
persona più
go
paziente,
as
più
you
equilibrata?
plan or to become a more
Se il mio
patient
obiettivo è
and
più
balanced
importante diventare una persona più
person.
paziente
So if
e
my
mi
goal
trovo
is
davanti a una
to
difficoltà
become a more
e dico che
patient
bello,
person
posso
and
praticare la pazienza.
and I
Che
find
cosa ti è
a
successo oggi?
difficulty
Perché
in
ti sei
front of
rimasto
me, I
così
say,
nervoso?
how
Come
beautiful, I
mai è
can
stato?
practice patience.
Ho praticato la pazienza. Perché la pazienza non si ottiene così,
Because patience doesn't
mantenendo
come
uno
just like
stato di
that, it
calma,
comes by
non
maintaining
reagendo con aggressività
a state
dinanzi a
of
una difficoltà.
calmness.
È lì
Also,
però
when
che
you're
devi
in
fare
front of
anche tutto
an
l'allenamento.
object of anger,
Quindi che cosa è successo oggi? Mi sono
that's
allenato
when
con
you
la pazienza.
practice
Che bello.
patience. So, what did you do today? Well, I
Però
practice patience. Oh,
cambia la
how
prospettiva.
beautiful. But it changes perspective.
Però c'è un punto importante in tutto ciò.
There is an important
Che
point in all
è
of this.
vero che è molto
That
importante
is true.
chi divento e come mi
Well,
trasformo.
that it's
Ma ci sono due
important what
punti
do I become, how do I
devo
transform
farlo
myself,
con profonda sincerità.
but I need to do it, we need to do it with profound sincerity.
Perché, come posso dire,
Because, how can I say,
questo si unisce al secondo punto. Ci sono
this
delle
is
cose,
connected to
delle
another
situazioni
point. There are some
che noi
situations
non siamo capaci di viverle bene.
that we are not able to live
Perché non
well.
abbiamo le risorse,
Because
non abbiamo i mezzi, non
we
è
do
perché
not
è
have the means,
impossibile
the
vivere bene.
resources, not because
Noi
it's
abbiamo le
impossible,
risorse e i
but
mezzi
we
per
don't
vivere
have to
bene.
have the means.
Perciò, se io
And
sono
so,
dinanzi a una
if I
situazione
find
che non
myself in
sono
front of
capace
a
di vivere in
situation
un
that I'm
modo che
not
mi
able to live
trasformi
in a
verso
way that
migliorarmi, cosa devo
that
fare?
allows me to become a better
Cambiare la
person,
situazione,
what should I do?
allontanarmi da una
Change
situazione
situation,
piuttosto che da un'altra, perché non
take the
ho la
distance,
capacità
because
di
I do not
poter
have the
affrontarla in un
capacity
modo
to
sano.
face it in a healthy way.
E ci sono diverse
And
situazioni
there are
che
many
quelli che hanno la
situations
capacità di affrontare in un modo sano sono pochissimi.
that
Sono certe cose che è meglio
are very few, those
allontanarsi.
who are able to face
Dopodiché
face
questa
them in a healthy
sincerità di
way.
riconoscere le nostre
And so
piccole debolezze.
the sincerity here
E ci
is to
sono delle
recognize our
debolezze
own
che sono
weaknesses.
caratteriali,
There are some
fisiche e
weaknesses that are
interiori.
for our own personality,
Fisiche, per
of our
esempio,
own body,
io mi sono
culture.
accorto quello che ho raccontato qualche volta con i media sociali.
So, for
Un giorno
example, I
in cui
realized
stavo
with the
prendendo
social
tutta la
media,
notte, stavo
I
prendendo cura
day
dei
that
cuccioli
I
di
had to
lager,
stay awake all
perché
night
stavo da fare
because
una
I had
volta
to
per
take
prendere
care
cura dei cuccioli. La prima
of
settimana
the
c'è il pericolo che la mamma schiacci
dog
i
pets.
cuccioli di notte, quindi svegli. Ok, fatto il turno, ero lì.
And so
A un certo
I
punto
was
ero
awake.
stanco, una cosa che
A
non so,
certain time I
succede,
was
ho preso il
tired,
telefono in
and
mano,
so I took
alle
the
3,
phone.
non
It
lo
was
so,
like 3 in the night.
entro in YouTube,
I go,
di solito non entro mai
I
in YouTube,
open YouTube.
entro in YouTube, ovviamente non vado a vedere me stesso,
Obviously, I don't go and look at myself.
quello che faccio è comincio a girare
And so I
e
start
vedo una
going
cosa
around
che non sapevo che
and I
c'era,
see
che si chiamava
something that I
YouTube
didn't
Shorts.
know that it existed. There
Entro
are
in quella
YouTube
roba lì.
shorts, and I start getting into that.
Io sono uno curioso,
And I am a
quindi vedo ogni
curious
video
person,
dall'inizio fino alla fine.
and so I see each
Vado
video from the
e
beginning
mi
to the end.
accorgo che ero entrato in una
And
sorta
I
di stato
realized that
meditativo
I
profondo.
sort of entered a deep
Circa 3 ore
meditative
dopo,
state about 3 hours later.
la sensazione era quella di essere, di voler uscire e non riuscirci.
The feeling
Devo smettere,
was
sì, ma ancora uno.
kind of like
Ma sì, ma
wanting
è
to
lì
get
che mi
out,
mostrano che, ma
but
guarda che carino quello.
can not able to get
Ok?
out. Yeah, one more,
Finché a un
look at
certo
this, so
punto, in
cute.
totale saranno passati 3-4 ore, non lo
And
so,
so at a certain
mentre
point,
parlavo,
in total, it was like 3 or 4 hours.
smetto,
The dawn
ma io
was
penso
starting to
nella
rise.
piccola
Okay, I
mente.
stop. But
Il
the
giorno
worst
dopo,
is yet to come because
a un
the
certo
day
punto,
after,
fra una cosa e un'altra, ci sono stati quei 3 minuti di vuoto.
in the middle of
Che cosa ho voluto fare? Ritornare
this and that, there were like
per
3 or 4 minutes
protetto
of
dalle
pause,
stesse.
and I felt the need to go back into that. but luckily I protect myself, okay, now. And so we realize that there is a dynamic that these means, this social media use, that it's physical, it's chemical. And if I recognize that limit, I need to protect myself. This happens with many substances, from sugar to cocaine to coffee. So the other day I learned a new collateral effect of coffee, which I didn't know before. It decreases the flow of blood to the brain. So with time, the healthy consumption of coffee in time is like 100 quantity.
Un caffè normale dello Starbucks a 300 di quella roba lì, uno. Il consumo sicuro in un giorno sarebbe 100. Un caffè di quelli a 300.
So like a coffee from Starbucks is like 300 of this quantity, and the healthy quantity will be like 100 per day. And so it speeds up the degeneration of the brain because of the lack of the flow of blood. That's what I heard. I'm not the person to say that it is like that. I don't have. But this is to say that I have my weaknesses, physical weaknesses, like certain dynamics that I can fall into. I can have all the determination to not get into something, but I get into it. The sugar creates addiction, willing or not. The same with social media.
Per questo, una volta che io conosco le mie debolezze, io mi proteggo.
And so if I know my weaknesses, I can protect myself. No, I cannot stay here because I do not have the capacity to manage it in a different way. I cannot stay in this situation because I do not have the capacity to face it in a healthy way without blaming the other. But I do not have the capacity, so I take the distance. This can also happen in a relationship with another person. If I see that the interaction with the other person transforms me in a bad way, and so I develop more anger, aggressivity, rancor, sadness, and so on, it means that it's a relationship with which I should take distance. And it doesn't mean that it's the other person, that it's bad, but it's the interaction. Question: is there a relationship that is 100% healthy? I don't think so. Any relationship, but there is some kind of balance in the percentage, and there are also different moments. Maybe there is a difficult time when there are situations that bring more tension, and then one can have more patience and see things. But in a general way, it should be a relationship that helps to develop oneself and the other in a good way. Because also the relationships of codependency hurt one and the other, because one acts with violence and the other also suffer violence. And so we go on and create loops, and because we get stuck in situations, and so we need to have sincerity and courage. Which is also the courage to cut the sugar and cut behaviors that we know that are harmful, and that we know our own weakness and we are not able to deal with in a different way. I saw, for example, people that have so much internal stability that other people that cannot, o- that there are some things that most people can't deal with, they can deal with very well. But then if I can't, if I don't have that stability, then I must have the sincerity and recognize my limits and make healthy choices. And so the goal is to grow as a more healthy person and to live daily situations as a mean to become a more healthy person on a mental level, behavioral level, physical level. And this not only, going back to the analogy at the beginning, this doesn't only bring me serenity at the beginning of the journey, because I also don't I don't have expectations on how things go, but because I have trust in my own resources, and because of the goal is not to get to the other side, to the other shore, but to get there transformed in a healthy way, in a better way.
Una storia indiana che c'era qualcosa che vedere con Ganesh.
So there was also this metaphor that I heard, like from Indian story, that maybe had to do with Ganesh, and it had to do with this man that wanted to conquer the highest mountain, tallest mountain of the world, which is Mount Meru, this mythological mountain. Very difficult to get there, and once he gets there, he puts his own flag, and then he looks around and he sees that there are a lot of flags that other people put there, and it's like, how? And there he realizes that it wasn't important to get there, but how? How did you get there, like as a person? How did you transform yourself during that journey? And so when we say that life is like a journey, the important thing is not where I get to, but how do I transform myself during the journey? In other words, who do I want to be when I will die? There is this thing of asking children, who do you want to be when you grow up? Me, who do I want to be when I die? When I reach the end of my life? It's not such a trivial question, eh? Because when I ask myself, what do I want to be when I die, there is an important thing there. It means, what do I want to be beyond the identity of myself, the material things, and so on. Today, as I was coming here by car, I was with a person that was coming to Milan for the first time. Here there is the monumental cemetery. And I said, oh, here there are many people buried. And no, I said there are many corpses, bodies buried. And so when I say, what do I want to be when I die? I talk about what is beyond the body, the material, the personality. It's not an easy question to answer like that, but it's very important. And so, to not have much attachment to where we go, what happens, but more to have attachment to how I live, to how I transform myself, how situations teach me. I don't know for every one of you, but when I look at myself, I can highlight at least 5 lives inside of this one for me. if I look at the periods of my life, I see in each one of the periods like people that I interact the most with, situations that seem to be forever, but then they change, and then again seems they will be forever, and then it changes. It's like being reborn each time. But the most important thing that inside of all these lives that I have had, inside of this I transform myself and I am the result of what I lived. And the most important thing in the end is not where I met, what I did, but how did I transform myself.
Questo era un po' quello che volevo oggi.
So this was what I wanted to talk about today, decreasing the expectations and not living with the arrogance of thinking of how things should be or go, and to be grateful for the good things and to learn from the things that didn't go so well, and again to embrace, to welcome the contradictions also inside of us, because welcoming the different aspects allows ourselves to cultivate, to nourish one aspect or the other. And this was mostly what I wanted to share with you today. And now we make our dedications and we see each other again next week, because I will be in Italy until like the 10th of April. I don't remember which day of the week it is, because I have to go to the United States. So initially it was supposed to be for 10 days, but maybe it would be less. But at least I have to be there for 2 days. Then I will go and meet Trinchen Rinpoche. So it would take at least 5 days minimum. So from the 10th to the 20th of April, talking about what we were saying before, making plans, more or less it should go like this.
Losan tempe drume sasumgi drowe munsel tatu ne gyurchi kewa kuntu yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chi sada lamge yun dorje changi kopa nyur tobe sho simche neba chinye pa nyur tu nele targyure chi drowe nini malupa taktu chungwa mebra sho menama tudan demba sanga dejo druba yi kandro simbo la sopa ninje semdan dengyure chi chonam kuna ludan sem 동안 내바 치녀파 대다 다게 선함키 내가 갸서 토파르쇼 니모 델레 츤델레 니메 쿠얀델렉시 닌센 딱도 곤초 숨키 징길로 곤초 숨키 ngo드부솔 곤초 숨키 트라시쇼 all'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Grazie a tutti.